Hey there, it's Robin, and you're listening to the Healthy Habits for Midlife Mamas. This podcast is all about you, your health, your wellness, and making those 1% shifts that can transform your life one step at a time. Here, we're going to explore simple, holistic strategies to help you thrive and not just survive in this beautiful midlife chapter. From whole foods and movement to mindset shifts and spiritual grounding, I'm going to guide you through all of it so that you can feel your best inside and out. If you are ready to reclaim your energy and make wellness a priority, you're in the right place. And if you're loving what you hear, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps me and you to reach more women just like us. Now, let's dive in and see what we can find. Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm super excited today to be having a conversation with Amanda. She is one of my local peeps, and she's got a really amazing story and all the things that she's done because of some of the challenges she went through. So welcome, Amanda. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Robin. Thank you for having me. I'm so
Absolutely.
excited.
This is going to be great. So a lot of people may not know who you are or why you got into what you're doing. So I just wanted to start by having you backtrack as much as you want and just
Sure.
sort of introduce who you are and kind of how you got on the journey in which you are now living.
Sure. So my name is Amanda Carlson. I've lived in Florida for 16 years. I'm a midlife mama now.
That's right.
A lot of your listeners and yourself, but I was not a midlife mama when this journey began. So really, I'd have to say it was about maybe 14 years ago how I got into the whole gluten-free my life and what started it all. I had my third child, Anna, who is now almost 16 years old. And Anna, after I was done breastfeeding Anna, I noticed that she had, when I started introducing food into her diet, she was getting a lot of rashes on her body. So I guess what people would call eczema now. But at the time, I didn't even know it was eczema. But she had rashes all over her body, painful rashes all over her body. She had circles under her eyes. She had extreme constipation. And of course, here I am. I'm a mom. I'm a young mom. I already had two other kids. They had no issues. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what can be going on? This kid must have allergies. So I take her to a dermatologist first. The dermatologist tells me she has eczema. Didn't know what it was again. Okay, what do? They give me lotions and creams. We start using these. Nothing is working. At the same time, she's still dealing with constipation. So of course, I'm giving her all the foods that I would give a person who's constipated, thinking she needs more fiber and this and that. At the same time, she's still dealing with rashes. I'm taking her over the next year to dermatologists, to her pediatrician even, and they're like, yeah, some kids are constipated. Yeah, she has eczema. She has rashes. Maybe you need to start using some kind like laundry detergent that has all the free of dyes and fragrances. I started writing to diaper companies asking them, what are you putting in your diapers? My kid has this. And it was always symmetrical on her little butt cheeks, her elbows, her arms. She'd even have little rashes on her belly. And I would write to diaper companies. I was at a loss. I had no idea. I didn't start really reading much yet. So 14 years ago, the internet wasn't, like go to the internet for everything right now. I didn't even start going to books yet. I was relying on doctors only. And anyway, no, nothing was helping. I changed her diapers.
I guess, the first question that keeps popping in my mind as you're talking is because I relate a lot to that. But as a mom, a third child mom, you've been through the rodeo a couple of times, and this is very different. And we have been taught that you go seek medical attention, right? And you think that you're going to get the answers because these people went to school. These people are supposed to be helping you with your children.
Right.
And so what does it feel like when you continually walk out of doctor's offices not getting anywhere?
It's so long ago, but I have tears in my eyes now thinking the frustration. I was enraged most of the time. I remember getting into a fight with a doctor saying, stop giving me cream. Something must be causing this. Eczema just can't exist. Like, why would this perfectly plump breastfed child all of a sudden have rashes on her body? Something is causing this. So I was just very frustrated, I felt very helpless. I felt like a bad mom. I cried a lot. I cried to my husband. It was awful. I mean, it was so sad. I mean, that's how I felt. It was awful. And I didn't realize at the time well, you asked how I felt about that. I didn't realize at the time that they didn't even know, because doctors, as you and I know, are taught one way. And now that this whole nutrition boom and, functional medicine boom is taking hold, they're not they're not taught that way. They're taught to treat instead of figure out what the problem is and
The
then
root cause.
yeah, the root cause, the root cause. So anyway, I would say a year went by. It was horrible. And I started finally doing the research on my own. And ironically, there is celiac disease in my husband's family, but celiac disease was only a disease of his younger sister. She had it from the time she was a baby. Nobody had ever heard of it before. It was such a rare thing to have. And Anna was not presenting with celiac symptoms like bloated belly and diarrhea and failure to thrive. So we didn't even think it could be that. And I started doing my own research. And I remember we went one Thanksgiving to my mother-in-law's house. My sister-in-law, who has celiac disease, she was there and she said, why not for the heck of it, take her off of gluten? And I'm like, but she's not presenting with the typical symptoms. Anyway, that is what we did. We took her off of gluten. And a week later, Robin, I'm not kidding you, her rashes were disappearing like magic. The circles under her eyes were gone. 2 weeks later, the constipation was gone and she was having normal bowel movements. This is after a year of doctors and again, not even books or anything, doctors and asking people and writing to companies and changing her food and changing all my cleaning products. I use vinegar on everything. I washed all of her clothes separately than ours. Nothing was working. And in the end, here we go. We tried this gluten-free diet and that was it. Boom. And I was in disbelief at first, but my husband and I were both in disbelief. We're like, no way, it can't be that simple. A year of all of this and not, I mean, this is it. It's food. Right. And that was the
So for those of you listening that might not know what celiac disease is, I'm going to have Amanda explain it in a minute. But what I wanted to say is something that I learned from interviewing Glyphosate Girl. Her name is Kelly Ryerson. And learning from her, not learning, but I think relearning, because you hear something once, you have to hear it a bunch of times before it, kind of settles into your brain. But knowing that, celiac is a disease, gluten sensitivity is different. So there is a difference between, but ultimately, the glyphosate that's being sprayed on our wheat crops is part of the freaking problem.
Yes.
And so I'm always curious, because I'm like, now that she's older, right? And she's probably been on a very strict, very regimented lifestyle.
Yes.
Like if she went to live somewhere else in another country where they weren't spraying, glyphosate and she tried something, I mean, I would never ask her to because that might upset her stomach, but I'm always curious, like, would they have the same reaction?
Hey, Robin, I love that you're asking this question because so after we figure this out, and we can go into detail later, but I made it my life's mission. Now I couldn't even believe it. I was like, right. Oh my gosh, it was food. It was food. And now I wanted to understand how could food be causing this for my little baby girl? This is insane. And how many other people is this happening to? So anyway, to answer your question, we took Anna to Italy this past summer. Anna has full-blown celiac. It was confirmed about a few months after we decided she had celiac disease and we knew it was in Jay's family. And once we took the gluten out of her diet, we took her to a gastro who was amazing. And he said, Amanda, I do not want you putting her back on gluten. She had something called herpetiformis dermatitis, which is celiac of the skin. There's no doubt. Once you took the gluten out, she was better. It's in your family. Good job, but let's go ahead and do some genetic testing anyway. And it was something that we paid for on our own. It was blood work, sent it off to California, came back. She did indeed have the gene for celiac, just like you could have the gene for so many, even for Alzheimer's. But what I learned, and I'm sure you did in the IIN, I'm not sure where you do IIN also, was that genetics load the gun, but environment
pulls the trigger.
So and I had no idea.
So again, for people listening, this is why I want to have moms on that have been through a journey with their children, because a lot of us don't know until we know, right? I mean, that's the majority of us. And if we can educate, 10 people just to start spreading what actually is happening, people might start to understand it a little bit better. Yes, celiac is a gene. It is a disease. It is something that is genetic. But if you remove the environmental factors, you're not going to suffer. You're not going to have the same results, and your body can freaking heal. Like our bodies are human vessels. They, if given half the chance, they can actually heal. And we just have to give it the right environment, right? And I say that from experience. Both my girls are gluten sensitive, but our journey was dyes. So Ansley, she was allergic to milk, didn't know that. She had like the worst babyhood. It was like, oh, she's just a difficult child. I'm like, no, this screaming in the night,
There's a cause. There's a
There
cause.
it wasn't because she was hungry, right? It wasn't
Right.
because she was a bad baby. She just didn't feel good, you know? And when I found that out, I'm like, all those years that I felt like I don't know what to do with her, you know, like she's screaming all the time, you know, and she sleeps for 10 seconds. And I'm like, it all had a reason, right? And I knew, you know, like in your mother gut, you know.
Right.
And so once we removed dairy, that was fine. But then around 2.5, like the tantrums on the floor were like cuckoo, lachuku, you know, and like, and at that time I thought we were kind of being healthy, you know, like I had gotten rid of some things due to something that I had learned. And then I was like, something has to be triggering this. And, you know, we went to the doctor and they're like, you know, she could have behavior, whatever. And I'm like, I don't believe that. So anyways, I started doing my own like
Your own
pullbacks
research.
and
Yes.
I didn't even research anything. I just like, when is this happening? What is she doing? What has she eaten around it? Right. And so just through trial and error and learning and just documenting and, you know, all the data, I was like, well, it's these particular foods, it seems like. And then I looked at them and I was like, again, I wasn't an ingredient detective then, but I was like, well,
Right.
they all have dye in it. So let me look up dyes and see what. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me right now? So the minute we removed red dye, she stopped having those crazy tantrums.
It's
And
amazing. And you
I
didn't know until you knew.
100%. I was looking. I mean, we went to everybody. I mean, chiropractor and like natural people, and we were spending tons and tons of just trying to figure out. And then she also had eczema, which is an internal thing coming to the outside, and hers was
Yes.
dairy and gluten. And the
Yes.
minute that we stopped, and it was funny because in elementary school, you know, you go to class and you get the little treats, and I'd always provide stuff.
Yeah.
But she'd come home and I'm like, girl, what'd you eat? Like, I know you got
Right.
like the patches, you know. She's like,
Yeah.
oh, I just had a cupcake. And I said, okay. So, but you have to realize, see this is your body screaming from the inside, you know, and I'll always provide you with a yummy snack, you know, like I don't ever want you to feel deprived. But the crazy part and where I am now, which you can probably relate to because the kids are older and you can like get
Yeah.
out of the fog and you're like, okay, what our children don't have a voice. They are eating what we give them or what's provided to them. They don't have the shopping ability. They don't understand anything. And so we tell them not to smoke cigarettes. We tell them not to snort cocaine. We tell them not to do these things, yet we're giving them legal chemicals that are hurting them. So it's really frustrating. But you know, again, you might not have celiac per se or the gene, but you could also have a sensitivity to
Oh,
gluten.
and it's non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which with my business, I've met hundreds of people. I also believe my daughter, who now is 23, when she was 15, 1 year after she got her period, which would be considered a traumatic event to the body,
Correct.
she was eating gluten because everybody else was. Of course, I cooked gluten-free in the house at this point. I mean,
Right.
Anna had been gluten-free since she was 2 after we figured
Right.
it out. But she started getting stomach aches from gluten too. And that was it. I'm like, you need to take gluten out of your diet. I think that the traumatic event brought on an autoimmune disease. And
Yeah.
we can go back to celiac disease. It truly is an autoimmune disease, but it doesn't have to exist under the right environment, with the right food, which brings me back to, we took Anna to Italy this past year. I had heard from customers and I have read, and since Anna's diagnosis, have read hundreds of books. I'm incessantly reading, following people, researching. It's just my life. I love it. I'm fascinated by this whole cause and effect of everything, the glyphosate, everything. Anyway, we take her to Italy. Anna is the cleanest ever as a celiac. She never cheats because that's all she's known. She is so healthy. She has never been contaminated. She's been contaminated maybe twice. And we take her there. I know so much about Italy at this point. I read all about their food, the way they treat their food,
Yeah.
what they spray, what they don't spray, what they use. So we decide we're going to let her. She's 15 years old. We're going to let her enjoy Italy. First couple of days, I'm like, I'm kind of nervous. No, by the third day, she was eating pizza, pasta, and the bread. I swear to you, Robin, that child never once had a reaction. Never, no kind of feeling of nausea, no diarrhea, no constipation, no rashes, no head fog, nothing at all. I eat gluten-free all the time just because that's what our house is. And by the way, my husband has celiac disease. Didn't find out till his 30s. I ate all this in Italy as well, and I felt great. If I touch anything in the United States that has gluten, like if I go out with some girlfriends and I have a piece of bread, I get the strangest head fog later. And I think it's because I've kept it out of my diet too, so I'm not
Yeah.
used to it. But anyway, Anna ate it in Italy. Go back to the whole glyphosate thing. You're 100% correct. I mean, she was fine in that country. And that's even more enraging, right? That she doesn't have to live this way and just eat all these rice products and all these other, like everything that's gluten-free, of course, is either frozen or it's packaged, which, isn't the healthiest either, but she does live on a diet very much of meats and potatoes, vegetables, rice, fruit. She's the healthiest eater I know because of that. I don't want her eating.
So, and that actually is a point I wanted to bring up, because when we started, the gluten-free lifestyle, because I will not call it a diet, but when we removed all of these things from us and from our house, it's really easy to get duped, because you go in the store and, we live in this fast-paced world. We're not like the home cooking. Now, there are some people, I'm not gonna say everybody, but a majority of people are not used to like cooking from what I'll say is scratch, which is just making a meal. Like you're either buying something frozen to add to your meat, or, it's like a convenience thing. It's just, our world has just become one big convenience pit hole. And so I stopped buying a lot of that stuff, but then, I would go and try and get like quote unquote snacks, because again, we live in a society that says we have to have a lot of snacks, which is untrue. But I kept finding that the gluten-free, a lot, not all, but a lot of gluten-free stuff, when you actually read the ingredients, contains a lot of chemicals and crap. So just like any fad, right? Because I feel like gluten-free became this giant fad thing. Well, oh my gosh, look at this. It's gluten-free. And it's like, okay, that's great. It doesn't have gluten, but what else does it have in it? And you have to check, because you're dosing one thing for another. It's kind of like the fat-free diet. It's like you're taking out the fat, but you're adding a bunch of chemicals to make it whatever fat does to products.
And sadly, some of the breads have seed oils, which is
terrible.
Here you think you're eating healthy, and then you have these inflammatory seed oils in the bread. And that actually brings me to why YOLOV was such a big thing for me. I started in 2018.
2018. Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So 2018, you're like, here's a need, which I have a product for you that I see the need. I'm not a baker, but I'm trying to find somebody who can concoct something, because it's the question that I get all the freaking time, which is, do you have a good protein bar? A clean one. That's what people, clean one.
I totally do.
Okay, perfect. And I'm like, well, I've only found like 2. I said, I'm interviewing somebody next week. I get this question all the time, but somebody just asked me, and I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I'm interviewing somebody. So let me just check with her to see. But again, it's that duping of, I need to have a lot of protein. And yes, if you're on the run and you need a convenience for here and there, but it can't be your staple. Like it's got to be just your one-off. Like, I'm going to be busy today. I need to bring some stuff with me to make sure I'm not going to be hungry while I'm out, kind of a thing.
Or if you're an athlete, I know you're
an athlete. Yes.
Children who are athletes and stuff like that, of course. Or even any of us, you're on the go. Women, that's why women don't cook anymore, because women are working and they have, their children have bigger careers than them, and we're driving them all over the place. So of course we need convenience.
Yes. So you saw a need, and you saw it within your child, which I can totally contest to. There was not a lot back 20 years ago. There really wasn't.
I didn't want her to live without the goodness. I'm a foodie. I'm from Chicago. I come from a big Polish family. I come from a city where there's a bakery and a tavern on every single corner. My grandparents always had fresh pastries in the house. And that's comforting to me. I think it's so special to have a good treat after school with a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. And like you, I was looking at these packaged foods and I'm thinking, this is just crap. We're just trading out the non-gluten-free packaged goods for gluten-free packaged goods. And some of them are great. And some of them try really hard. Oh my gosh, we definitely like Bobo's bars and things like that.
We've definitely come a long way in 15 years.
Long way, especially, since Anna's been diagnosed. But I wanted to be able to provide like what I grew up with in Chicago to people around here who were gluten-free, who were looking for a better, higher quality product, and not just a gluten-free baked good that just had unthoughtful ingredients in there. Like everything I use is organic and free range eggs. And I use the unrefined sugar. I never use seed oils. I use grass-fed butter. It's so expensive, but it's better for you. So that was my goal. I wanted people to taste that and just to have a good baked good, not every single day. Cause we don't need to eat baked goods every day. So that's how I started YOLOV, and there was such a need for it. And I started baking. And at first I wasn't the best baker. Like I had people try it all the time and they're like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. I did get to a point where my kids were trying everything where they don't even like baked goods anymore, just because they live with a baker. So it's always around. But it got good. And then I started the farmers markets, which was so scary. And that was it. It took off. And it was one of the best experiences of my life so far, just because for me, not just baking, I don't think baking is my calling, but more like you, to help people
serving
and
somebody.
to make, service. I was serving young kids, toddlers, women who hadn't had a good pastry in years, and men, I mean, who were just, you know what that feels like, even your own kids, right? You show up at birthday parties and parties and you never get a good, soft, yummy piece of cake or a muffin or a piece of coffee cake. And I wanted people to feel that, feel good and have a yummy, good baked good. So plus at the same time, I was hearing so many stories, everybody's story about why they were gluten-free, why they were choosing to be gluten-free, everywhere from celiac to non-celiac gluten sensitivity to MS, rheumatoid arthritis, thyroid disease, type 2 diabetes. I mean, the list went on, and I could not believe it. And we would spend Saturdays, there would be people crying. I'd be in tears. We'd be sharing these stories. And the whole time, all I could think, Robin, was, I wish I didn't exist. I don't think that my little small business would exist if, go back to Glyphosate Girl and all the other, these, what's happening, Food Babe, I wouldn't exist if we would just treat our food the way Italy treats their food and France treats their food, right? So,
well, you would exist. You would just have friendly neighbors.
yes. Yeah, true.
You definitely would exist. So again, I think I often, as parents, when we go through challenges, there's a lot of guilt that's associated with it because you are supposed to be a protector in this. But I also have really come to believe that every challenge that I've been presented with and that I see other people being presented with really brings people through to a greater calling, right? They, you had something, whether you believe in God, the universe, whatever, he was pulling you through something to show you that you had this opportunity to do something, not just for your own children, but for the rest of the community. And that's a beautiful thing, and so I hope every day, on your worst day, when you're frustrated and whatever, that you remember that it's more than just a baked good. It is changing somebody's life for the better.
Oh, you're sweet. I wish I could remember. My husband tells me that. I say, Jay, I have to do more though. I have to do more. There's got to be more. People need to know more. There are all these kids suffering out there with rashes and behavioral issues and all sorts of things going on in their bodies because all these nobody knows, right? Because the food industry just keeps putting all this bad food out there. And we as young moms, how would I have ever known that rashes? Like, I could have kept Anna on drugs, what scares me, and lotions for years. I mean, they would eventually.
And there are plenty of people that's their life. And when I see them, I'm like, well, what have you done to kind of investigate the internal stuff? Because just so you're aware, like, eczema really is an internal problem, just really surfacing on the outside. But again, my last straw with just you saying, not knowing, I remember specifically being in the pediatrician's office, and Ansley had, I don't know, some wild rash that was kind of looked like a Christmas tree on her stomach. Like, it was sort of like a faint. And I was like, what is this? And they were like, oh, well, you can put her in a bath with a cap full of bleach. And I looked at them and I was like, have we ever met? I was like, I wouldn't even put bleach on my clothes, first of all, or on her clothes, especially. I'm like, and you're wanting me to stick her in when she has eczema, her skin is cracked. What? I said, okay, this will be our last visit here. I'm like, I can't take it anymore. Yeah. So I went home, and at that time I had been introduced to Ava Anderson, which is now Pure Haven. And they had a baby line. And so one of their products was a baby rash cream, and it was calendula was the main ingredient. And so I was like, well, let me just give it a try, And so and he told me that this virus rash was going to last 8 weeks. And I'm like, what the heck? So I started putting the calendula on, the diaper rash cream, whatever. And within 3 days, it was like fainter, but 5 days it was done. So I took her back there, and I was like, I just would like to have a moment with the pediatrician because I want to show him something. And I took him in there, and I remember he came in and I said, remember me? I'm sure you do.
Oh, I'm like, sure.
I'm like, you told me 8 weeks. You all told me there was nothing I could do. It was a virus. And I said, I want you to take a look. And I showed him, and he was like, what did you do? And I showed him, I said, here's the product that I used. So he called the 2 other doctors in to look, which I'm like, okay, at least he's doing looking. Right. And I just said, I hope that you do better for your other patients. And I said, we won't, no longer be at your practice. Can I get my records? We left. And
did he ever say anything? Did he?
No, he was interested. He was curious. He couldn't believe it, to be honest, because that's not what they learned. It wasn't trained on it. It was, and it wasn't necessarily blaming him, but what I tell often my clients and people or anybody, it's like, you take what you need from one particular person. When you hit that dead end, do not be fearful to move on. Like, you don't, back in the day, we had the same pediatrician the entire time we grew up.
Right.
my mom went to one doctor and it was like, whatever he said was the Bible, and I was
Oh,
just
I
like,
know.
what the heck? I'm like, no, that
Well, and
doesn't
they
work for
pass
us.
that feeling on to their generation, at least. Everything the doctor says, they're the gods. They know
Yep.
everything, listen to what they have to say. And they learn how to treat and never look at the root cause. Even with her blood work, I remember at the time, her blood work was off. And I know more of this now, and I've helped literally hundreds of people with this one. Her blood work showed that she was on the borderline anemic. We
Mm-hmm.
had done a lot of blood work. B12 was super low, or vitamin D, a whole bunch of things, which years later, after all my research and studies, I know now that celiacs, because they malabsorb in their lower intestine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so just for people out there who don't know about celiac, true celiac disease, the villi in your lower intestine are damaged by the gluten. And when they're damaged, instead of sticking straight up like little fingers to absorb all the nutrients that are coming through our body, they're flattened by the celiac disease. Therefore, everything in your small intestine go right through, and usually in the form of diarrhea comes out, and you're losing all the nutrients. And a sign, those black circles that Anna had under her eyes, were a sign of low iron. And that's every time now I see a child with circles under their eyes and they're kind of pale, I think, oh my gosh, that mom doesn't know. Most likely that child has some kind of food allergy and he's not getting the nutrients he needs also. But she was borderline, right on the line. And they never said anything. They didn't flag it, where we know now, Robin, both of us and many people hopefully will start learning. But like in functional medicine, they look at that and they say, this is weird. I know it's in the normal range, but why is it low? Had
Mm-hmm.
anybody looked at it, they'd be like, this is weird, Amanda. She does have low iron. What's her food like? Or what are you feeding her? She has low B12. Maybe you should start putting her on vitamins. I mean, they never even thought to look into it. They were just like, here's the lotion. Here's the
Yeah.
cream. Here's the medicine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was just food. It was so simple. It was just food.
Yeah.
It was just gluten. I mean,
Yeah.
and for her, it was gluten. But again, the non-celiac gluten sensitivity, there's no doubt. I think I have that now because every time I eat gluten,
Well, what's interesting is our bodies accommodate, right? If you're not showing a bunch of symptoms, your body is really good at keeping homeostasis. So it will kind of mask things until it's overloaded too much to where it then can't, right? And so when I remember the first year we took Ansley off dairy, we obviously didn't have dairy in the house. I was like, we're not going to make this child go through this by herself. We're all doing it. And I remember a year later, I was like, I was out with somebody who wasn't her. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get it. I think I got an ice cream or something. And my word, I
oh
was
yeah,
like, what the heck? I obviously am sensitive to dairy. I was like, so very interesting. It's now, again, I think quality, quantity, healing time, there's a plethora of things because our body can heal. And so when it does heal, if again given better nutrition, like milk, for example, conventional milk versus raw milk versus whatever milk, and
right.
all the things, there are different types and different qualities. So some things
And
don't
that
bother
makes a
me.
difference.
It does. And some things don't bother, and some things still bother me and I wouldn't do it, so it's,
Yeah.
again, and everybody, and I use this term a lot, is bio-individual. So like what's going to work for you is not going to work for me. And that makes total sense because your environment's different than my environment. Your past traumas, situations, whatever is also very different than mine. Your lineage is different, everything. So it's like we try to make everybody the same, which is
But you're
what
right. It's so
it's
bio
just not.
individual to
Yeah, it's just
100%
not.
right.
So my mission, is always, this podcast is educational, but it's also bringing on people's stories, because when people can learn from other people's, first of all, our stories are worthy. They are one that serves other people. And when we go through something good, bad, or indifferent, we should be sharing more. And we're not really a society that does that a lot. And so that was one of the things when I was planning for this platform was, yes, I want it to be educational, but I also want it to be very relatable. And us as midlife moms that have older children, or even some still have younger children, you don't know until you know. And so hearing from other people and creating that village of, I don't feel like an alien by myself,
Right.
I think is really pivotal in making change and understanding. And eventually, and I really feel in my heart that, change is coming. I feel more people speaking, more people trying, more people pushing the envelope. And again, I can't say without more greater confidence, we have to vote with our dollars. So please stop supporting companies that are not doing the best that they should be doing for us here in the United States. And once we can start to do that and learn who they are and stop spending with them, Jason Karp says it all the time. If they can we can get their bottom down, dollar down line down to 5%, just 5%, they will change because they will be forced to. You either, my friend Jade and I always say, you're going to come willingly or you're going to get drugged by your hair. It's coming. It's happening. Menopause, middle life.
It's an exciting time. I mean,
it really is a very exciting time.
There's a book I've read. I always, and I actually had it in my other room, but one of them is Wheat Belly, which I'm sure you've heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes,
the
I haven't read it though.
edition is my favorite. Yes. And he talks about in the book how it's not our grandmother's wheat.
Oh,
and I tell people that all the time. This did not exist, Robin, 100 years ago.
Nope.
This did not exist. This was not a problem. All of these issues that our children are facing and our young people are facing and all the millennials, this was not an issue. Milk, ever since it's been, the way milk is treated, all of our food, but it's not our grandmother's food, period, anymore. And we either have to change it, which I do believe that it is changing. And in our young daughters in their 20s, I believe by the time they're hopefully in their 40s, it'll be done and it'll be back to good again. I mean, maybe that's too hopeful. I don't know, maybe sooner than then.
I don't think anything's hopeful. We just have to keep talking about it and putting it out there and just keep, educating. Yeah. It's all about education. I came from being a teacher. That was my first career job. And I wholly believe that, solely believe that, education is what's going to turn the needle, because you don't know until you know. Yes. And I know a lot, and even still I'm blown away by some of the statistics that I hear, do all the data research, and then they come back with these statistics. I'm like, ugh, like it's crazy time. So, and I do agree. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, we've always eaten this stuff. And I'm like, but it isn't the same stuff. It's just not. And so you're right. It has been a food that's been around for centuries. It's just morphed into something very chemically. And if you want to do better in general for like personal care products, cleaning products, and food, you just have to learn to read your labels. And once you do that, it's so easy to decide what's going to be a good product for your family or not, based on what your values and morals and whatever you want to put into, if you're okay with one thing, but not the other, you'll start to eliminate just naturally. And then that will grow. And I often talk about the 1% shift because, as you know, it can be very overwhelming. And that's what coaching, is a hand holding sort of to get people going so that it isn't overwhelming. Because when people are too overwhelmed, they just get frozen and then they can't participate. And so it's just about providing those little 1% shifts so they can see the difference, right? Because it doesn't take that long once you remove things to see a change. And interestingly, we had been on that, healthy eating for a long time, but Ansley, she has always been my carb sugar addict. That's just her go-to. And I would find the cleanest bars, but she would rather eat 9-10 bars a day if I would let her, rather than having real food. And I'm like, okay, something is not right here, and I get like, we all like sugar, but she was like, it was like radar central for sugar and clean sugar, unclean, like it's just weird. Yeah. So, and she danced a lot. So she was often at the studio and whatnot, and she moved around. So that was great. But during COVID, we were all stuck at home and we would do, a family gathering at night, where we'd come together and talk about whatever our highs, lows. And we're like, she can't sit down and she just can't like hold her tongue. It's like very bizarre. And so I called the pediatrician, who we went to Dr. Cannizzaro. He really changed our lives. But so I said, I hate to even say this, but maybe she's got ADD or ADHD. I don't really know. And he was like, here, get my book, read up on it, which he wrote a book called The A Epidemic, which is asthma, ADHD, autism, and allergies, and how they're all linked together. Right. He gives like protocols and like what is what within. So it's very interesting. The book's a simple read. But anyway, so he said, well, let's do like some gut testing and some neurotransmitter testing. And I was like, okay, whatever, $bazillion later. But I tell everybody about that test because the picture that we got back from investigating her gut health, and that, gut and brain are connected. And so she had candida overgrowth. So everybody has candida. Right. But when you are more sensitive, your like large intestines will sometimes create an overgrowth. And when you have candida, what feeds candida is sugar and carbs. So that is, I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. And then she said, and then some of her neurotransmitters, which was like GABA, norepinephrine, they don't just do like serotonin and dopamine and all, but they do like a whole panel. And it was interesting to see again, those links for needing the dopamine hit, right? That's what the sugar and the carbs do, is give you that little hit. So it was
Candida
like,
was begging for the sugar.
exactly. And then that would give her the high, it was this crazy like cycle. So that it was kind of a blessing to be at home for that amount of time, because we did the Candida cleanse, all of us, we did it together, the whole family. And within 2 weeks, she was a completely different child.
Oh
We
my
were
gosh.
like, my husband and Delaney, we were like, wow, like this is so freaking amazing
Right.
and also wild. So we basically just eradicated the Candida and then, repopulated her gut with better things. She was on a little bit of GABA. Her sleep was much better. And again, at that age, they don't really tell you like, I'm not sleeping well, and she was like,
No.
wow, I'm getting really good sleep now. So that was really transformational. And then she sort of like went on her own looking, because, everybody wants to go to Starbucks. So I said, you're going to have to make decisions for yourself. But what I encourage you to do is go online, look at the nutritional values and see
Right.
how much sugar is in all these drinks. Because I think it's important for you to just be aware. And she was shocked. She was like, are you kidding me? Like 60 grams of sugar. I
I
mean,
love showing the kids that. They're like,
and
okay, maybe I won't get it anymore.
so I was like, well, find something in there. How can you make it to where it's not as, so it only has 7 grams of sugar,
Yeah.
something that's still enjoyable. So you can go with your friends and be in community and feel a part without overloading yourself, because you are sensitive and you will get Candida overgrowth again,
Yes.
so you have to just so she did pretty good for a while. She did dip once she started driving, they're all just driving and doing whatever. And so
Right.
her junior year, she's like, help me, like, I'm ready to get back to like ground zero, like help me get, I was like, great, I would love to help you, but it's like, as a parent, to see your kids making choices that, like celiac is one thing, because it's like, you absolutely, there's no, like, this is like, you can kind of dabble before you like get a symptom, so it's hard as a parent to let those, little fingers go, and just have to pray that, hopefully they figure it out. And
It was interesting though, finding that out about her. How many other people, Robin, were in your situation, who are in your situation, and they're prescribed ADD medication, and without even ever considering what they're eating or the Candida. There's so many other factors, right? It's so sad. Like, come on.
And the whole like food dye, which I'm on a mission rampage about, is because it is a neurotoxin. It does affect their behavior. And I am very curious, and I know it will unfold at some point when we start getting rid of these things in school lunches and in foods in general, and we have safer choices for everybody. How many people's behaviors are not going to be the same, and how many people are not going to be put on the spectrum for a behavior disorder, when maybe it is, and I'm not discounting it, but maybe it's food, maybe it's chemicals. And when, do you know Moms Across America?
No.
Okay, you'll have to look her up. So she's very much an advocate. She's part of the glyphosate, but she's also part of a lot of other things. And she and Kelly Ryerson tested 50 or 60 school lunches across the United States. And what they found was a high percentage, I want to say 90 to 95%, something crazy like that, had glyphosate, but they also had other pesticides, chemicals, metals, all kind dyes, of course, all this stuff. And so they went to legislation last spring, and somehow somebody got them a meeting with the FDA, the EPA, and all these people. And so then they were shocked. They didn't know, because I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But they didn't know
Congress.
Yeah. Like the EPA, who's, like, so they didn't know, because what they said was something along the lines, don't quote me on this, but something along the lines of, well, they say, the companies, the EPA, that if it's only so many parts per billion, blah, 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 it's safe. And so they're like, okay, but let's get some logic brain here. That might be safe one time, but you're doing it every day, 3 times a day, year after year. These kids' bodies, their body burden they can't carry a load like an adult. And not adults can carry it either, but I'm just saying it's worse for a child. And so Senator Booker, I think that's what his name is, he actually put a policy in place that's kind of trying to go through, I'm not very good at like the legal system, but it has to go through the cabinet and Congress, whatever, but it's a Food Safety Act, and it will remove not just dyes, but all glyphosate, all chemicals, all things out of school lunches. So,
oh gosh, they have to get all the companies though to stop.
They definitely 100%.
Right.
So but it has to start somewhere with some type of
some kind of legislation
or something put in place. But I'm on a mission right now.
Go back to gluten. I mean, that's probably a huge cause too. There's no doubt when you look at the way the wheat is treated here and processed and overly sprayed,
Right.
that's causing the gluten.
So, and again, for people who haven't heard this conversation, what they do with at least to my knowledge, and you can say different, but they spray for bugs. That's the first thing. But then they do a harvest last spray to dry out the crop quicker. So they get more crop basically, or harvest. But the problem with that is that glyphosate does not come off of the food. So that means no matter how much you wash it, you put, baking soda and, you wash your whatever, it is in the food. So you're eating it. So think about, how much food you ingest that's grown in the ground, a lot. I mean, so
every carb is grown in the ground. Wheat, even oats right now. I changed my protein bar to glyphosate. I had no idea until, and I read, just like you said, we're learning new things every day. I had no idea a few months ago how much of that was in oats, our oat crops, because they do what you said. They spray them first, they harvest it, then they respray them. Holy cow. So now I just buy the one brand, which is again more expensive, but they're the best.
Glyphosate free though.
Yes, glyphosate free. So
yeah. So the main crops, I was also surprised that chickpeas is a very big. So if you guys are buying chickpeas and you're eating hummus,
yes,
please learn how to make hummus on your own. Number one, it's so easy. Even, some of my family members, can do it and they're not, super savvy, but glyphosate is sprayed on those crops, and a lot of hummuses have seed oils. It's very rare to find a packaged hummus without seed oils. So you think you're doing good by adding in, chickpeas for protein, but then you're also eating a bunch of seed oils. And so that's inflammatory. So it's almost like counterintuitive in the way.
And if we stop buying, like you said before, we stop buying those products, eventually, and you start buying the better products, eventually the people who are making the bad stuff start saying, okay, well, now our bottom line is going down. People aren't buying it as much. Let's change. I mean, right? That's the only way to start the change, like with the eggs, the grass-fed meat, everything. We have to start. And if we can eat less too, then we don't have to be buying all this food. We don't need to be the society where we have snacks all day long, where we're stopping at Chick-fil-A at 2:00 for a sandwich. We're not supposed to be doing that. We're supposed to be eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Maybe some small snacks throughout the day, but whatever happened to an apple or an orange or a banana, a spoon of peanut butter, a glass of chocolate milk?
Well, I'll tell you what's happening is that they're not satiated. So when they are grasping for a snack, it's because they're really hungry, because their body hasn't been giving the nourishment that's going to keep them satiated.
Exactly.
So that's where the flip
food
has to
doesn't even have it anymore, right, Robin? I mean, gosh, we can go on and on about this forever. Of course, you and I could, but food that they think that's good for them, that they're putting into their bodies, doesn't even have the vitamins and minerals to sustain them. So their brain is telling them that they're hungry. They're not hungry. They're just not getting all the vitamins.
They're just not nourished.
Yes, they're not nourished.
It's not hunger. It's more nourishment than it is. So, well, first of all, tell everybody where they can find your products. And I'm so excited for, number one, that you took the leap of faith, but number two, that you have found success, and that, I hope, again, on your worst day, you remember that you're not just serving one, you're serving a community of people who really do need better for you products. And I know for myself, I would much rather support someone local than someone from another country. So, or in another 100%. State or whatnot, but it's hard to find,
it's hard to find. Well, right now I'm not at the farmers markets, but if you were to go onto my Instagram or Facebook, you would find that most Wednesdays I put out a menu, and you can order from the menu, and we do a pickup on Saturday and Sunday. And it's all fresh, anywhere from my protein bars, which I'm going to bring you some of my protein bars.
Yes, I want to taste them.
I actually sell those right now also on Etsy.
Good.
I actually like to do more, but yes, they're super clean. It's plant protein right now, but I'm actually going to start making one with naked whey, only because they use grass fed instead of just random whatever. Anyway, so you can go to my Instagram page or my Facebook page, find the menu, order. Otherwise, you can give me a call. I do birthday cakes all week. That keeps me busy because, again, gluten-freers need birthday cakes.
They do. And it's really hard to come by a good gluten-free birthday cake.
And a fresh one, right? In a nice bakery box where you bring it home to your family and you put the candles on it. And it's a real cake. And it's not just sitting in a frozen section somewhere. So, of course, that's only for locals. But yeah, so give me a call.
I'm excited to see what your future holds, because I already can envision a lot bigger of whatever what you're doing currently.
I can too. It's happening slowly but surely, but it's happening.
And I love that. And I think slow is the best way to go, because if you go too fast, too hard, it's not sustainable.
I
So
agree.
I got to take care of yourself, right? So before we end, that leads us into the last, which is a question. And I ask people that come on the show for a couple of non-negotiables that you've created for you to make sure you're having your best, most healthiest days, and pouring into yourself, especially when you have a business and kids and all the other things.
Oh gosh. Non-negotiable is my morning alone coffee. I have to have that no matter where I am, no matter what kind of day it is. Even if I know it's going to be the craziest, busiest, earliest day, I still wake up early to have my coffee. I exercise every single day, even if it's for 20 minutes going for a walk. Almost always sit outside in my backyard and just have a little 5-minute me time and look at the sunrise, look at the sunset. And I think non-negotiable for me is learning every single day. I'm a little obsessed by it, but I have to know what's going on so I can help the people I love around me. That's
Mhm.
just my non-negotiable. Coffee and learning every day. And it's about nutrition and health.
Yeah. No,
Always.
I love it. And it's really important. And it's not obsessive, because if you don't know, then you're not able to advocate for yourself. And that's what
Right.
I tell people. If you're blindly going in and you haven't looked at something, like, let's talk and let's come up with some really quality questions to ask your practitioners, because you deserve and you need to know like what it is and whys, and people they just are busy and they just haven't been taught that yet. But I think, again, it's just a learning curve of like, I don't feel good and I'm going to the doctor, but before I go, I should list some things out that I don't feel well with, but then know that they should be asking you, but they probably won't, what your lifestyle is. So telling them like, this is what I'm doing. Maybe it's something there, so it's like helping them to get curious also. But again, I think a lot of that is going to change in the next decade. I really do feel a strong
And we're
pull.
part of that change, which I think is so exciting. People like you and me and all these people you and I follow and read about. And I love social media as a platform. I think more and more young people are also putting it out there. And then Vanny Hari, she has, like, the food babe has changed so many people's lives. And now people are starting to pay attention.
Right.
You're right. It's a ripple effect, like we talked about at the beginning. And it's happening. It's happening slowly but surely.
It is, absolutely. So, all right. So I'm going to drop Amanda's, like, her Instagram handle and her website and all that into the show notes, so that you guys can go check it out and see what she has to offer. And then if you do purchase something, I would love to hear your takeaways. So in the comment section, there is now a comment section after the podcast ends on Spotify, and you can type something in, just like a regular communication. So if you listen to this and you try and you go back and try, please come back to the episode and leave a comment, because somebody else that is listening to this podcast will see those comments after. And that would help them, because again, we want to see what people have to say, about what they're trying. But it helps. Remember, you'll be changing somebody else's life. And that's kind of the whole point of all of this. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we will see you guys next week.
Thank you, Robin.
That episode had so many great takeaways. I hope you feel inspired and more empowered to make small 1% shifts on your wellness journey this week. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. If you want to leave a review, share your thoughts, and let me know how you're going to be implementing these 1% shifts into your life. And don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with another mama who could use a little wellness love. Want to stay connected? Join me on Instagram and Facebook at Live Life Balanced with Robin. Check out my website at livelifebalancedwithrobin.com for more resources, and grab yourself some freebies while you're there. Until next time, I hope you find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to come your way. See y'all next week. Love to y'all.